Hi, welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm so happy you're here. So today I want to show you how to knit this beautiful off-the-shoulder top. But before we get started, I just want to do a little plug for my Etsy shop. Yes, I do have an Etsy and I sell digital patterns as well as physical pieces. So if you're interested in supporting me, feel free to check it out. I'll leave the link in the description. Okay, plug over. Now let's get into it. The first thing that we need to do, of course, is get all of our materials together. For this pattern, I recommend that you have at least 300 yards of medium weight yarn. The amount of yarn that you're going to need is going to depend on your size, but I think that 300 to 400 yards is a good place to start. Today, I'm using this hobby yarn called Winter Glow. It's a wool and acrylic blend, so definitely not very summer friendly. But I'm trying to get through my stash before I go out and buy more yarn. So hopefully I'll be able to wear this top maybe during the fall. I'm going to be using 4.5 millimeter needles today, but that's because this medium weight yarn is definitely on the thinner side of medium weight. I suggest that you use whatever needle size is recommended on the yarn label. But as you'll see, everything in this pattern is based on your measurements and your gauge swatch. So it's really up to you. You're also going to need a crochet hook that's the same size as the needles you're using. And besides that, all you need is a tape measure, some scissors, and a yarn needle. Before we knit up our gauge swatch, we just need to take 3 measurements. The first one is going to be the width around the widest part of your bust. The second is going to be the desired length of your top. And the third is going to be the length of the folded part of the top. Now, in order to figure out how many stitches to cast on, we have to knit up a gauge swatch. I went over this in more detail in a previous video, so I'll leave a link in the description if you want to see more about why this works, but I'm just going to do a brief version of it today. For the swatch, you're just going to knit up a simple 12 stitch by 12 row swatch, and then once you're finished, you're going to measure the width of it while it's stretched. Because the top is fitted and we want to figure out how many stitches to cast on, we need to measure the swatch while it's stretched to imitate how the piece is going to fit on our body. Once you have the width of your stretch swatch, you're just going to input your own measurements into this equation. All you have to do is take the width around the widest part of your bust, divided by the width of your stretch swatch, and then multiply that by 12 because that's how many stitches were in the swatch. And then once you have that number, round to the nearest number because we're actually going to be adding some 1x1 ribbing at the end, and you need an even number of stitches to do that. Your final number at the end of all that is the number of stitches that you're going to need to cast on. We're also going to use our gauge swatch to figure out about how many rows we need to knit in order to reach the desired length of our top. As you can see, when you stretch your swatch, it not only gets wider, it also gets shorter. So in order for our tops to fit correctly, we're going to need to knit some extra rows to reach the right length. The equation for figuring out how many rows you need to knit is pretty much the same as figuring out the number of cast-on stitches you need. You just have to take the desired length of your top, divided by the length of your swatch while it's stretched, and then multiply that by 12 because that's how many rows were in the swatch. That final number is about how many rows you're going to need to reach the desired length of your top. Okay, so we have all of our materials, we've done the math, it's now time to cast on. I'm just going to be doing a long tail cast on as always. Also, please ignore the nails. I just took off my gel nails that I've had on for months, and they are looking rough. Once you've casted on all of your stitches, you are going to cast on 1 extra stitch because we're going to use that stitch to join in the round. So with our tail end and our working yarn on the right needle, we are just going to insert our right needle through the first stitch on the left needle. We're then going to insert our left needle into the first stitch on the right needle and pull it over that stitch that we just picked up. We're just going to pull our tail and working yarn, and now we're joined in the round. To knit the base part of this top, you're just going to knit stockinette stitch in the round until you have about 8 rows left, and then you're going to knit a 1x1 rib. So go sit somewhere comfy, put on your favorite show or podcast, and I'll see you when you're ready to cast off. So I have my top here. I'm ready to cast off now. And because we're ending with ribbed rows, I wanted to show you how I do a stretchy cast off to make sure that our rib has a nice stretch. So this technique is an extension of Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off. You can see that my next stitch is a purl stitch, so I'm going to yarn under, purl, then insert my left needle through these 2 stitches on the right and pull it over the last stitch. Now, because my next stitch is a knit stitch, I'm going to yarn over, knit, insert my left needle through these 2 stitches, and pull the last one through. So you're just going to alternate between yarning under and yarning over between your stitches, depending on what the next stitch is. So if it's a purl stitch, you're going to yarn under, and if it's a knit stitch, you're going to yarn over. So here's the top so far. It's time to try it on and figure out where to put the armholes. Okay, so here's the top on. It's already looking really cute. What I'm gonna do is just take my stitch markers and mark on the top where I want the sleeves to start and end. So to turn this tank top into an off-the-shoulder top, essentially what I'm going to be doing is crocheting a chain from this stitch to this stitch around the arm, and then going back in with my knitting needles and picking up stitches through the chain and through the front and back to create the folded part of the top. This part of the design is going to take some trial and error to figure out how many stitches you need in the chain to make the fit comfortable. But I'm just going to show you how I join the chain to the piece. First, I want to make sure that the spacing is even on my sleeve sections. So I'm just going to count the number of stitches between my stitch markers on both sides and make sure it's the same. Now, taking my yarn, I'm just going to make a slip knot. Then insert my hook through the stitch marked with the stitch marker. I'm going to pull my slip knot through and chain 1, just tighten it up. I'm just going to start with making a chain, and I'm just trying to guesstimate the length so that it fits comfortably around my arm. That seems about good to me. So I'm going to insert my hook through the other stitch marker, just pull through as a slip stitch. I'm not going to fasten off yet because I'm going to try it on and see if it fits, and then make the necessary adjustments, either make it longer or make it shorter. And then I'm going to crochet the same chain length between the other 2 stitches. So here's what the top looks like with the straps. I promise you, you just have to trust the process. It's going to turn out really cute. I'm going to show you how to pick up stitches back onto your needles. But first we need to figure out how many rows we need to knit to get the length of the folded part. We're going to be using pretty much the same formula as before. You're just going to take the length of your folded section divided by the length of your stretch swatch and then multiply that by 12. So same thing as the first part, when you have about 8 rows left to knit, start knitting your 1x1 rib and then use that same cast off method that I showed you to finish the piece. So the way that we pick up our stitches is very important because we want our knit stitches to be facing outwards and our purl stitches to be facing on the underside. So I'm going to take my working yarn, have my piece laying flat in front of me. We're going to start by picking up stitches on the back side of the piece. So for now, ignore the part that's in front of you. We're going to be working into the back. So working into the top row, I'm just going to insert my needle and then pull a loop through. And then I'm going to go into the next stitch, pull a loop through, and I'm just going to keep doing this all the way around the piece. When you get to the chain, you're just going to do the same thing, insert your needle into the chain, and pull a loop through. Once you've picked up all of your stitches, you're going to knit in the round until you reach the row count that you calculated, making sure to start the 1x1 rib when you have about 8 rows left to knit. So once again, go find somewhere comfy to sit, and when I see you again, we'll be finished with our tops. Okay, are you ready to see the finished product? I'm honestly obsessed with this design. It just makes me feel so elegant and beautiful when I wear it. Pro tip, if you don't want the sleeve slipping down, you can take some elastic thread and sew it through the inner lining, and that'll keep it nice and tight to your body. I personally kind of like the slouchy look, so I'm going to leave mine as it is. I hope you enjoyed following along with the tutorial. I had so much fun designing and making this top for you today. Feel free to check out my Instagram and let me know if there's another one of my designs that you would like a tutorial for. Please leave a like if you enjoyed watching and subscribe if you're interested in seeing more yarn-related content. I post new videos every Friday. And I can't wait to see you again next week. Love you, bye!